New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee. I'm Charles Purcell. This is The Log. Well, for regular listeners, the show's going to sound just a little bit different from here going forward. We're changing our format just a little bit because of the national emergency we find ourselves in with this authoritarian regime. We're going to focus mainly here on The Log on activism, on the resistance. We're going to get real specific on what we can do in the fight. So the general format of the show is going to be, we'll hit a couple of quick headlines, some quick analysis, but that won't take up the whole half hour like you're used to. That's just going to be a quick hit, and then I'm going to rely on you to do your digging and your reading on the actual news of the day. Like I say, we'll hit some headlines, but we really want to focus on the fight from here on out. We'll be doing 2 episodes a week at least. I might drop in some bonus episodes if I feel it's necessary. But I just felt it was really important that we get started on the fight. If you're a subscriber and all these extra episodes are getting lost in your feed, I encourage you to always go over to the website, charlespurcell.com. The episodes will always be there in order, easy to find. We started this new mission with the Wednesday episode. We gave you pretty much all of Bernie Sanders' speech from the Senate floor. I encourage you to hear that. And for this particular episode, we're going to do an overview of the series I've got in mind. Don't hold me to every detail. We may have to jump around a bit, but this is what I've got in mind, and I want you to have an idea of what's ahead. So first, just a couple quick headlines, just a few examples of the kinds of things that are happening. Chemical companies have asked Trump's EPA to hide potential disasters. Yeah, we're going to have a very cozy relationship now between the big corporations and the Fuhrer. More inspectors general have been purged, especially ones investigating the various businesses of one Elon Musk. Speaking of which, by my count here, looking at the headlines, there are 11 different departments and agencies. Department of Transportation, Interior, Justice, Agriculture, the National Labor Relations Board, EEOC, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, Securities and Exchange Commission, Department of Defense, Federal Election Commission, and Office of Government Ethics. You may have heard some of these in the news recently, and they all have something in common. They are all currently investigating or having some sort of regulatory battle with one or more of Musk's companies. So, SpaceX, Tesla, X, the rest of them, they all have dealings with the federal government. Not only the multi-billions of dollars in contracts that you've heard about, but also these troubles, investigations, battles over regulations. And just by sheer coincidence, these are the very agencies and departments that are being stripped to the bone by one Elon Musk. The Department of Justice is officially open for business. They've hung out their shingle with the Eric Adams case. New York Mayor Eric Adams, of course, indicted in New York for corruption charges. The Orange Menace has ordered his Department of Justice to just throw it away, to stop the prosecution, which in and of itself is completely unacceptable. But the way he did it, even worse. In the order, didn't even cite any facts or evidence, only cited political issues. As in, well, we need him in the fight. We need Mayor Adams in the fight against illegal immigration. So, completely unprecedented, over the line. If you're watching the news this week, judges, the judiciary, a big part of the story, because they've blocked or delayed nearly every executive order because they're all damned illegal, starting with the freeze of all federal grants and loans. The funding freeze at NIH continues, defying a court order. So now this back and forth, judges are not only giving their initial ruling, but they're coming back a second time saying the Orange Menace is defying the orders. So you're going to hear the phrase constitutional crisis thrown around a lot. Well, that's exactly what a constitutional crisis is. When one branch of the government refuses to play ball with the whole system of checks and balances. The executive, in the form of this new fascist monarchy, has already conquered the legislative branch. The Republicans have said, okay, you're the king. Go for it. Democrats are in the minority, and so far haven't been able or willing or had the brains or the guts to do anything about it. So in this unitary executive they're after, they've conquered Congress, and now they're after the courts. And they're prepared to say, okay, we're going to defy your order. What are you going to do about it? Make us comply? Yeah, you and what army? So this is exactly what a constitutional crisis is. Some expert commentators say we're already there. Some say we're on the brink. Republicans in the House and Elon Musk, head of Dodgy, and Vice President Vance already suggesting that we impeach several judges. So they're just a couple of headlines from the fast-moving news cycle. I want to point you towards some upcoming protests. Protests are planned in all 50 states for President's Day. The 50501 movement, or 5051 movement. It's a little confusing. It's not a good name. It stands for 50 states, 50 protests, one day. 5051. Anyway, they're the ones who organized a nationwide protest, called for people to come out in every state capital on, I think it was February 5th. And that got some people out, and they're planning their second action for Monday, February 17th. So mark your calendar, Monday, February 17th. The protest is aimed at opposing the Trump administration, with organizers calling for a resistance against fascism. Now, I do caution you a little bit. This is very loosely organized, which is fine. I don't mind loosely organized. I don't want a lot of stringent leadership making all the rules about how we should resist. So leaderless is actually a good quality. But it also can cause some problems. Apparently, there have been some mix-ups in logistics. Before the February 5th protests, and probably, again, there was some misinformation or disinformation, or maybe it was true, I don't know. But it was going around saying that maybe this was a false flag, that it was just to get people out and confuse them. It really wasn't a movement at all. I don't know what's going on. So check it out, the 5051 movement. Check out any local organizers in, near your town to make sure everything's on the up and up. Because I was pretty suspicious about the last one. But then I saw on the news that indeed thousands and thousands of people around the country did show up. So good. It's good. Very good. So there you go. Well, as I said, that's what this program from here going forward is going to be all about resistance. And today, I want to give you an overview of the series. Okay? Tell you what we're going to be talking about. Each episode will pick up right where we left off from the previous episode. So today, kind of an introduction. Why the time is now. Well, listen to our last several episodes. Listen just to my introduction here. Listen just to a few stories I mentioned. Listen to Bernie Sanders' speech from the floor on Wednesday. It's absolutely time. It's past time. The time is now. There's no tomorrow on this. It's today, it's tomorrow, it's the next day, and it's every day until we get this thing done. Will it work? Yes. We'll talk about why this works, why we should be hopeful. There's plenty of historical precedent. We're going to be talking a lot about general strike and boycotts and protesting and getting out and being active. And I want to preface that by taking some time in the series to give some grace and give some space to everybody. Everybody's different. My little slogan is do what you can and do what you do. In other words, do what you can. Each of us is different. We have different capacity. We have different personal well-being. Not everyone can commit to the same level, and I want to make sure that there's no judgment going on. And do what you do. Don't feel like you have to reinvent yourself. Bring your own particular skills to the table. Be creative. There's also an opportunity to learn. Expand your comfort zone. As I've said, we need all oars in the water. And then there are things that literally everyone can and should do. And we'll talk about that. Things like generally staying informed, spending all of your media time in the non-corporate sector. So there are some things that all of us can do. And mostly what all of us can do is something as opposed to nothing. We're going to talk in this series about how to organize. Now, I'm not an expert. I'm going to share what I've learned. I'm going to share what I'm learning about joining existing organizations. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Being a leader, being a follower, being creative. Got to talk about how to promote. Promotion is very important. Promoting ideas, promoting events. We want to get real specific about direct action, protests, rallies, the whole idea of disruption. We are 1,000% nonviolent, but we are 1,000% pro-disruption. There's a big difference we have to learn between violence and disruption. We'll talk about civil disobedience. We'll talk about things that have worked before, things like teach-ins. Could go on, all different kinds of direct action. We'll talk about just what a boycott is, different degrees, what you can and can't do, who might be exempted from the boycott. Like I said before, this is mostly leaderless, and I think that's a good thing. And there's going to be zero judgment. So when we give suggestions about something like a boycott, don't ever feel like I'm bullying you, like I'm telling you what you have to do to be a good person. No, I'm giving you my ideas, my suggestions, what other people have learned over the years, what works, what doesn't work. So I think the boycott is going to be a huge tool in this whole thing. And I'm going to mention once again, and I'm going to mention every day, February 28th, a 24-hour economic shutdown. Put that in your search engine, February 28th, economic shutdown. Get the particulars on that. Simply put, we're not going to spend a dime for a 24-hour period from midnight to midnight on February 28th. It's a Friday, I believe. So mark that in your calendars. We'll talk more details next episode. I've already read some backlash in the comment threads about, well, what are our demands? Okay, so we'll talk about our demands. I have plenty myself. Mainly right now, we have to put a stop to the freight train happening in Washington, the lawless rampage that the Orange Menace and Elon Musk are on. Also, it's very important that we talk about the concept of a general strike. There is a day already scheduled for that as well, March 15th. The moniker I've seen out there is Shutdown 315. So we'll talk about how general strikes work, and we'll talk about that particular event. In the meantime, again, search that one up, Shutdown 315. And then we'll talk about things you can do right now, starting today. You don't have to wait for some scheduled event. You can start your activism on your calendar, and you can start it immediately. Now, it's not going to be easy. We got to spend some time talking about building community. It's very important, especially for things like general strikes and boycotts. We're going to need some mutual aid. It's going to take a community. Now, you've already got community, whether it's family, friends, neighbors, coworkers. Maybe you're a renter, you have fellow tenants. Maybe you're in a homeowners association, some special interest club or sports. We've got libraries and schools and community arts, music, theater. We got all sorts of communities. Don't feel like you're starting from scratch. So we'll talk about that. We've got to spend some time on media. It's so important that you take in non-corporate media and your own media, your output. We've all got our platforms. We got to talk about the various social platforms and how to use them. Speaking of media, at some point, if you're public and out there about your activism, and that's a big part of it, you have to be, as I always say, you have to be loud and proud. Activism doesn't mean much if people don't know you're doing it. So you're going to make yourself a little vulnerable. You're going to put yourself out there, whether it's a boycott or a strike or a street protest, a rally, a march, maybe a direct action, maybe a sit-in, something like that. You might very well get a microphone put in front of your face. Take that as a great opportunity. Think of yourself now as the spokesperson. Give that journalist what they want. Give them a who, what, when, where, and why. Identify yourself proudly. Tell them what you're protesting. If there's something happening right now or an upcoming event, give them a when. Give them a where to go, what to do. And the why, of course. That goes back to our demands. Democracy. Maybe it's personal. And then finally, before they take that microphone away, give a little call to action. Ask others to join. So we'll spend some time. We're going to spend some real time on not only where you get your media, but how you become really useful to the resistance as a media creator yourself. Now, we all think we're creators. We all think we're content creators. We've all got our platforms, and that's great. We want to take advantage of that. But the stakes have just become really, really high. So we're going to spend some time on that. Again, today is just an overview. This is going to take, I'm not sure how long, many, many weeks. We're going to get through this as efficiently as we can, but I also want to be thorough. And as we finish up, I also hope to spend some time on not just our immediate demands, but long-term demands, so this doesn't happen again. And, this is the big stuff. Election reform, real government reform, reform in education. I said on a previous episode, if I could blink my eyes, snap my fingers, wave my wand, and go back today to a kind of Clinton, Obama, Biden type of government, well, of course I'd take that deal. To stop the Orange Menace and his fascist authoritarian rampage, of course I'd take that deal. But as long as he's wrecking the government, this is an opportunity for us to coin a phrase, build back better. Bernie Sanders alluded to this in his recent Senate speech. Universal health care, a minimum wage that's a living wage. There's a whole agenda that we can fold into our long-term demands so that as we come out of this crisis, we have not only averted disaster, but we've created something better going forward. And I'd like that to be a nice part of our discussion as this whole thing culminates. And finally, I've got some sort of bigger ideas, some sort of philosophical ideas that I feel strongly about. I've talked about over the years on many podcasts. And that is, if and when we do create this better world, and for me that's always one where money is taken out of its central position, its sort of controlling authority position that it has now. To a lot of folks that sounds like a sacrifice. And maybe it is. Maybe there are some things that you'll sacrifice. Certain conveniences of a consumer culture. But as I've believed and talked about over the years, I think what we gain outweighs the inconveniences by 1,000,000 to 1. Our relationships are better, our food is healthier, it'll taste better. Life will just be sweeter when the human element returns and we're no longer slaves to the master of money. So that's long term. And we'll close the series with that. Again, before I go, remind you, February 28th, look it up, search for it. 24-hour economic blackout. We're going to buy nothing for a 24-hour period. Why? Because it's the only thing they understand. It's the only thing that'll spook them. We're not going to crash the economy, but we're going to stop it for a day, and they're going to shake in their boots. And I think it's a great idea. I've been advocating for this for years. I love to see other people come around. I didn't have the voice. My voice is small. I don't have a big voice. I don't have the power to make these things happen. All I have is my one little corner to add my one little voice. And so I'm very happy that we have this scheduled. February 28th, 24-hour economic blackout. And then be ready, mark your calendars for March 15th. That's a general strike and boycott. And there for 24 hours, we not only keep every dime in our pockets and don't give them anything, we don't feed the beast for a day, we strike. That's also a don't go to work day. That is a general strike. Happens in other countries every once in a while. I'd have to look it up. Maybe you know history better than I do. Has there ever been a general strike in the United States? Well, we're way overdue. March 15th, general strike and boycott. So we're on our way with this new format for the log. It's all about resistance. When we talk again on Monday, we'll give you any important updates on the headlines. And then we'll get into why the time is right now. Why do things like boycotts and strikes actually work? In fact, we've got a little time here. Let's go ahead and get started on that right now. The time is now because not only is the situation dire, as we've itemized on every program, and obviously you can't turn around without seeing this on the news. So I hope we've convinced you at this point that the time for action is now. If I still have to spend time convincing you that this is a problem, well, that's a problem. We'll still give the top headlines here on this program. We'll remind you every day of why it's important. But if you feel like, we can just wait things out, see what happens, hope for the best, and my personal non-favorite, try to work with them. Try to work with the other side. If you're still hung up on that righteous idea, I'm not sure what else to say to you. Read the history of Germany of 1933. The parallels are frightening. So, the time is now for direct citizen action. Also because it's become very clear we cannot count on the major institutions of this country to swoop in and save us. The Republican Party has been damaged beyond recognition. It's full-blown MAGA. They've acquiesced. They've cowed. They've surrendered for reasons that you and I have talked about in recent episodes. All the most extreme right-wing policies that they've been trying to push since Reagan, well, they've failed. And they failed because the voters didn't want it. These draconian cuts to services, tax cuts for the wealthy, privatization, and deregulation. Generally speaking, the American public is in favor of cutting down on waste, fraud, and abuse. They want the government to be more efficient. But there's a reason Republicans have failed for decade after decade. Because it's all a boogeyman. It's all a ruse. And Elon Musk's Dodgy is just the latest iteration of this 50-year-old scam. So the time is now. The institutions aren't going to help us. The Republicans aren't going to save us. There's no John Dean to be a whistleblower in some dramatic Senate committee. The Democrats have proven themselves to be just weak beyond belief. Not anywhere near the opposition party that we need. So we can't count on them. So, direct action is needed. The corporations. Costco is getting a lot of good press because they maintained their DEI practices. They didn't bow to the will that most corporate America has. They're all on their knees. So, Costco has stood up, and they're getting great press, and it's showing up in their profits. I guess I read that they're just doing great. But of course, they're the exception. It's only newsworthy because of how rare it is. So, yeah, good for you. But are we going to count on Costco? And maybe the one or two others who I don't even know about. I guess maybe there are one or two others who might follow suit. But generally speaking, all of corporate America is falling right in line. Not only that, they're cheerleaders, literally contributing billions of dollars. So, no, there is absolutely no way the business community, the corporate community, is going to come in and somehow save us from this. So, yeah, direct action from us, you and me. That's what we're down to. That's why the time is now. And we are all we've got. Even the courts, we've talked about that. They're doing their best. But the Orange Menace is pulling an Andrew Jackson. Hey man, I'm Commander-in-Chief. Supreme Court, show me your army. Until then, you don't scare me. That's how radical things have become. As we speak today, we are no longer a nation of laws. We're nowhere near a democracy. So if the time isn't now, I don't know when it is. And I'll refer once again back to the great Senator Bernie Sanders, who just this week spoke from the Senate floor and reminded us that other impossible tasks have been achieved in American history. When everyone said the idea of defeating the British Empire, the greatest power in the world, to establish an independent nation, impossible. And yet, it happened. He went through the litany of history. The institution of slavery, too powerful, can't be defeated. It was. Women vote? Social Security and Medicare were once considered radical, impossible ideas. Every one of those achievements were successful, and every one of those achievements happened because ordinary citizens rolled up their sleeves and just simply insisted on it. They did the hard work, they did the grunt work, they did the dirty work, and in the end, they succeeded. So the time is now. The people who are going to make it happen is us, and we have an excellent track record of success. Okay. Thanks for listening. Please share the information. This program can be found on your favorite podcast platform. As always, go to the website, charlespurcell.com. They're all there in order. And thanks to our flagship terrestrial station, River West Radio, riverwestradio.com. There you go. I love you. I'm Charles Purcell.